Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video. Love to see you all for another one. And by now we are more than halfway through the first month of the year, and I do hope that all of you guys are on the path for achieving your financial goals for 2025. And by the way, I've been looking at the analytics and I have been seeing that a lot of folks are coming to the channel brand new, and they're in that range of about 20 to 29, right? And then of course I have some of my other folks that are in the 30s and 40s and beyond. But this video is going to be strictly dedicated to my folks in the 20s, and especially because from a financial perspective, I made a lot of mistakes in my 20s. I would say a lot of them were recoverable, but more importantly, if I can pass on the knowledge to you guys, you don't have to make the same mistakes that I did. And of course, you can go past and succeed what I was able to do. Now, if you guys are wondering where I'm at, I am on travel right now. And by the way, let me show you guys my view out of my hotel room. I mean, this is pretty incredible. So excellent views. I mean, I am blessed to be able to experience views like this. Now, while the views are amazing in my room, that's not what this video is about. And it's all about you guys, and especially my folks in their 20s that are watching my channel. This is going to be the top 10 financial mistakes to avoid, so that way you can go on into your 30s and be successful. And by the way, guys, this is in no particular order, just things that came to mind as I was thinking about what I was doing in my 20s. So mistake number one that I see all the time, and that is folks in their 20s, is living beyond your means. Now, in my early 20s, I made the mistake of living beyond my means, and especially because, you kind of want to have fun, you want to enjoy yourself. It really is a time to learn about yourself, learn about what you want to do in life. And during that time, you're trying to figure yourself out from a financial perspective. And majority of Americans don't have any financial literacy coming out of their households or in schools. So it's no wonder that you go into your 20s and you make mistakes like living beyond your means, because you don't understand how to create a budget. You don't know how to track your finances. So you have a tendency of not understanding how much money is coming into your account or how much money is going out. So you tend to just spend and go way beyond your means. And that includes a lot of things, between the gadgets that we buy, going out to eat all the time, lavish vacations. I mean, the list goes on and on. I was fortunate enough that by 24, I actually completely cut off all spendings. Not because I had figured the game out per se, it was because I was tapped out. And we'll talk about in another section why I was tapped out at 24 years old, and I almost went completely broke. So it was a good lesson for me to understand that living beyond your means is really not a way to have long-term success. All right, guys, so financial mistake number 2 that I see folks in their 20s make. And this one is interesting because it's really the start of the financial journey. And more importantly, this is where I see people sign up for credit cards. Now, isn't it interesting, guys, when you first start your financial journey in your early 20s and you go ahead and decide to take on those credit cards? Number one, most of the times people sign up for those credit cards for either stupid little rewards. Maybe you get a t-shirt, maybe you get, a free pizza or something. I know they do that a lot of times on college campuses. But once you sign up for those credit cards, that's when the cycle starts. And what most people do, which is they go out and they purchase stuff and they have no money to actually pay those things back. And it's quite unfortunate because I think credit card companies, they start to prey on the young adults. Again, we talked about we don't really have financial literacy coming out of our households, and most high schools don't teach this. So when you go off to college or you start working immediately, you start to get on this path where you get credit cards, you start racking up the credit cards, and then you never pay them back at all. So don't fall into that trap. Avoid credit card debt. Now, the third financial mistake that I see a lot of folks make in their 20s is not building an emergency fund. Now, in your 20s, I know there shouldn't be a lot of expenses. I mean, you're just getting started, so things shouldn't cost you that much, given that you're living with mom and dad. You typically have help, but I know that not everybody has the same financial situations, and sometimes you may have to grow up faster than others. But more importantly, that's still not an excuse for not having an emergency fund. And guys, I can't tell you how many times I was living on the edge because I would never have an emergency fund. Now, for those of you who know and have been watching me on the channel, I drove a really old car
and that was a 2000 Honda Accord. And that thing had a lot of miles on it. I mean, I think I got rid of it with over 220 some odd thousand miles, I think, on it. But in my time of ownership, I had to replace the transmission on that Honda Accord a couple times. But that is a great example right there of those cars, especially that particular make and model of that year, had very weak transmissions. And so that taught me a lesson that research your cars and understand what problems your car has, because you're going to have to start planning for those. And B, once you start planning for them, you really should have an emergency fund to be able to tackle things such as car repairs. So again, make sure you have that emergency fund so that way you're able to cover those unexpected events. So financial mistake number 4, and that is not investing early enough because you're too young and you have a lot of time in your hands. I cannot stress to you guys enough how important it is to get started on investing in yourself and also investing in your future. And if you don't know how investments work, and especially for my folks in their early 20s, or just even in your 20s in general, should I say, investments, one of the biggest components of investments really is time. Not necessarily how much money you're putting away. While it's true that you have a lot of times to invest in the market, a lot of times people don't even take advantage of the fact that time is on their side, and then they can put little bits of money down and they don't have to spend so much in investments later. Now remember, it's not necessarily that you need to put a lot of money when you're getting started, especially in your 20s. You just need a little bit of amount. Really what is on your side is time. And time in the market is really your best friend, because then you can start taking advantage of compound interest. So don't fall into that trap of not investing in yourself and in the market. So financial mistake number 5 for my folks in their 20s is buying a brand new car. Now this one is interesting because I almost fell into this trap, and actually this is what started my financial journey. Most people, when they graduate out of college or they start their new job and they're making the most money they've ever made in their lives, they think it's time to reward themselves. And I'll tell you what, a car in your 20s is usually the worst financial mistake that you can make, because really cars just eat your wealth. Most people don't even have the money to buy a car, so what they'll do is they'll put a little bit of money down, they'll go ahead and finance the whole entire thing practically. And so not only do you have a car that goes down in value, but you're also paying these ridiculous interest rates on top of something that goes down in value. I drove my 2000 Honda Accord while I was making 6 figures in my early 20s, because I had realized that I was basically a broke person and I couldn't afford a car. And so it was that realization that helped me avoid buying a new car. Because if you've seen my channel for quite some time now, you realize that because I had become an engineer in my early 20s and I was making a significant amount of money compared to what I've seen in my life, I thought that I would reward myself and go ahead and buy that brand new car. So we're halfway through the list, and you guys definitely learned a lot of financial mistakes that I either made or I avoided. But more importantly, hopefully you avoid these financial mistakes in your 20s. Now, if you guys are loving the content and it's definitely helping you out, make sure you go ahead and give me a like for the video, as it helps the channel grow. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications so that way you're notified whenever I upload new videos to the channel. Make sure you go ahead and share this video with a family member or friend so that way they can avoid making these top 10 financial mistakes. All right guys, so moving on to number 6, and the top financial mistake that I see for folks in their 20s, and this comes at number 6, is not having, or should I say, not taking the time to learn about financial literacy. Now, isn't it interesting that we go ahead and we go out into the world in our early 20s, and most of the times we have no financial literacy? Now, some of you are very fortunate where you learn it in the house, or maybe you go to a school that teaches that kind of stuff, but most Americans don't have that luxury. Now, I fell into that as well, because in my household, we never talked about money. It was very taboo. It's something that you didn't talk about, and nobody knew how you were doing financially. And the high school that I went to, that wasn't something that was taught back in the day. I won't give you when I went to high school, because then at that point I think I will date myself. So of course, what you need to do, especially if you're in your 20s, you have to start investing into yourself by understanding how finances work. One of the best things that you're taught in school is how to read. So it is up to you to go ahead And yes, I know people don't want to pick up books. It's not a fun and sexy thing to do, but you have to go ahead and pick up books so that way you educate yourself on how finances work. Now I'm going to give you guys some extra nuggets here. Some of the books that helped me out tremendously, and especially on the topic of money, and I'm going to go off in no particular order here, but make sure you capture these because this is very important. The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. Money Master the Game, Tony Robbins. The Richest Man in Babylon, Financial Peace, Dave Ramsey. I mean, the list goes on and on. I gave you a couple there, but that should be enough to get you guys started. More importantly, let me know in the comments, for those who have learned about financial literacy, what books do you recommend? But I think those are some good ones to start off with. Now let's talk about number 7. What is the biggest financial mistake that I see folks do in their 20s? And especially number 7, and this one hits home for me, is taking on too much debt, and specifically student loan debt. If you have seen my channel and you have watched me long enough, you guys know that I went into massive amounts of student loan debt. And of course, I never hid it from you guys because I always think that learning from other people's mistakes is awesome, so that way you don't have to repeat the same mistake. And at the time when I was going to college, I had taken on all these student loans because I thought that was the thing to do. And I took out a total of $187,000 between my bachelor's and my master's program. I know, which just sounds crazy, but I took on a lot of student loan debt, not because I had to, it was just because I didn't know any better. And the one thing that worked out for me really, really well was that I picked a career that gave me a very big ROI, and that was engineering. Now, there have been years in my career where I have made more money in 1 year than I have taken out in student loans. Now, again, I could have gotten those degrees at 1/4 of what I paid, but because I didn't know any better and because I thought that was the thing that you do, I took on a lot of student loans when I didn't have to. And I'm encouraging you guys to make sure you do your research. Don't take out student loans if you don't need to. To be quite honest, a lot of the times you can get your degrees with very little cost. Now, I know people are going to tell me in the comment it's not doable. Maybe when you went to college wasn't as expensive. But I'm telling you guys, it is still doable till this day. You need to make sure that you're picking a good degree, one that will give you a good ROI if you're going to go to college. And don't rack up those student loans, because there's nothing that hurts me more when I see people go into degrees that don't pay anything and they take on massive student loans just because they think that's the thing to do. Please, and I urge you, please don't make that financial mistake that I see a lot of folks in their 20s make. All right, so let's talk about financial mistake number 8 that I see a lot of folks in their 20s make. And this financial mistake applies to anybody. You don't have to go to college. This also applies to my folks that are also starting to work. And one of the biggest mistakes, again, that I see is folks not negotiating their salaries. Let me know in the comments if this sounds very familiar to you. You go ahead, you apply for a job, you go through the process of interviewing, and you're nervous, you don't know if you're gonna get the job, and guess what? You land the position, and now it's time to talk about salary. And you get that dreaded question, and they ask you during the interview process, they say, hey, what is your salary expectations? Or you go ahead and get that offer, right? And you get that offer sent to you via email, or maybe they, send it to you in the mail. I mean, who does that nowadays? It's most likely email, of course. But anyways, you talk about salary and you don't negotiate your salary, right? Now, let me tell you how much of a mistake this can be. Let's say you go ahead and you get a job offer for $100,000. Let's just say you're an engineer like myself, and you went ahead and got your first job offer out of college, and it was $100,000. And let's say you go ahead and you take the job offer without negotiating, which is what everybody does. Everybody is just happy to get a job and they don't negotiate. And let's say, for example, you decide to stay with that company for 5 years. What happens if you would have negotiated and you would have said, hey, instead of $100,000, I would go ahead and take the offer if we can come at $110,000, a $10,000 bump. Now, once you start learning how businesses work, you realize that if you know how to convey your value, a $10,000 ask is really not out of the question. But more importantly, you didn't do as I say, and you didn't negotiate, and you go ahead and you lose out on that $10,000. If you stayed there for 5 years, you've now made a $50,000 mistake. Isn't that interesting? And the longer you stay at the company, the worse the problem gets. Let's double that now. You stayed at the company for 10 years. You've now lost $100,000 because you didn't bother making that negotiation in the beginning, or most people don't even realize that you need to learn how to advocate for yourself. So it's very, very important that you negotiate your salary and advocate for yourself, because if you're not going to do it, I guarantee you nobody else will do it for you. So make sure you don't fall into that trap. All right, so moving on to number 8, and the 8th mistake that I see folks in their 20s make is not diversifying your income. Now, if you're in your 20s, you have the opportunity of a lifetime to diversify your skills and be able to go ahead and try multiple things. Have some side hustles with you. Don't just depend on one income. I can't tell you how many times I see folks, they work with one employer and that's just all that they do for the rest of their lives, not even knowing how the market will change or react. Now, while we're on the topic of diversifying your income, I'll tell you guys another mistake that I also made, and I want you guys to avoid it as well. Time is one of your biggest assets, and I hope you guys don't waste it by making the mistake that I did. And here's what I mean. When I was getting out of debt in my 20s, I basically took on so many jobs in order to generate income without even caring what the job was. So here I was working my 9 to 5 as an engineer, making over 6 figures. And man, it was great. I loved it. But after I was done working my 6-figure job, I would actually go to my second job. Well, second out of 4, I would say. But I would go to my second job at night, and that was fixing computers at a major retailer that still exists today. And by the way, that job did not challenge me whatsoever. It didn't utilize any of my skills. And so what I really should have done was I really should have taken advantage that I had these skills as an engineer, and I should have gotten some remote opportunity or some type of contracting position, something to utilize my high skills that I had available to me, and not waste it in a retail store, basically doing work that wasn't challenging me or really utilizing my skills. And if that's something that I can share with you guys, is don't make that mistake, because you only have a limited amount of time. And you want to maximize how much your earning potential can be. Or also as well, you want to find an opportunity that will also challenge you and grow your skills in other areas. And that position clearly wasn't one that met any of those guidelines. So again, don't make that mistake. Make sure you diversify your income. And while you're diversifying your income, make sure you're picking roles that extend your skill set or takes advantage of the skill sets you already have that allow you to generate a lot of revenue, because I should have not been in that retail store. I should have been doing some other stuff. So moving along, let's get into number 9. And number 9 is not taking advantage of the free money that you get from your employers. Guys, when you are starting out your career, and especially in your early 20s, take the time out to understand your company's benefits. Make sure you understand how a 401k works. Make sure you understand the differences between a Roth 401k and a traditional 401k. Make sure you understand what a match is, what percentage you need in order to get the match. Make sure you understand what an HSA is. Does your employer contribute to your HSA? Make sure you understand what equity is. Do you get any RSUs? What is restricted stock units? Understand what all these things mean, because these are the things that will allow you to make more money on the back end. And this is one of the biggest financial mistakes that I see folks starting out in their career, and they're in their 20s. All they do is they stick their head in the sand and don't bother reaching out to the folks to educate them, so that way they can understand how this benefit package will benefit them in the future. So make sure you invest the time to understand what benefits are available to you. And finally, number 10, last but not least, don't fall into the trap of buying new gadgets. Now, I was fortunate that I went super broke in my early 20s. And when I say broke, I had massive amounts of student loans, right? But with all that student loans on my head, there's no way that I was putting any money into stupid little things like phones or, technology, or whatever the case may be, that 10 years from now is not going to matter. And by the way, guys, I will share with you one of the ways in which I was able to learn this lesson very early on in life, And it wasn't just in my 20s because I had all the student loans. I had actually learned this lesson because I worked very early on in life, and I started working at 16 years old. Working at 16 years old, I was working in fast food. Working in fast food and making money living at my parents' house. What do you guys think I did with the money? Again, I bought all the electronics. And by the way, I'm gonna date myself here, but during that time, I was buying Nextel phones. And I had, if you know about Nextel phones, I had from the i730 and all the way on from there. I had almost every phone that came out from Nextel. So I bought electronics till no end. And so that is where I learned that buying all these little gadgets and trinkets absolutely do nothing for you, because here we are all these years later, and ask me where those phones are. You guessed it, they're in a landfill somewhere. I don't even know where they are. They're not important, and I wasted all that money, and had I saved some of it, I would be in a much better position today. So there you have it, 10 financial mistakes to avoid in your 20s. And hopefully you guys loved the video. Hopefully, it gave you something to think about. So if you're making some of these mistakes, go ahead and make sure you apply what I'm saying. Don't just listen to the video and not do what I'm telling you to do, guys. I'm telling you, if you can avoid these top 10 mistakes, you will be much further ahead than your peers. Now stay tuned to the channel, guys, because there's some additional content that I'm releasing soon. And we just did our 20s right now. So what about your 30s? What about your 40s? There's a lot of things to learn there too. So if you guys love the content and you really enjoyed, go ahead and give me a like for the video, as it helps the channel grow. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications so that way you're notified whenever I upload new videos to the channel. And lastly, go ahead and share this video with a family member or friend. And remember, if they're in their 20s, this can really help them. Anyways, guys, I'm gonna go inside. I gotta go attend to some business. I love you all. I appreciate you. And I will see everybody in the next one.